Welcome all, and I guess we will start. If some of you would like to introduce yourself, please feel free to use the chat box and begin. I'll just start with a brief introduction of what systems innovation is and take it from there. So you may be seeing here, it says a masterclass by SI Bangalore Hub. Its full form is Systems Innovation Bangalore Hub. And what is systems innovation? This is a brief, you can read through this, but the Systems Innovation Network from where whom I'm representing today, it's an online platform which supports ideas which related to systems innovation and methods towards it addressing complex challenges. That's what the platform does, and within the platform we try to build capacity through raising awareness, development of a lot of content related to systems innovation, building communities of practice and spaces for collaboration, and that's what brings that's how I'm here today. So Rice World Summit and Systems Innovation came together to have this collaborative space for learning and some discussion over here. So I'll go to the next part. The Bangalore Hub is one of the many global hubs of the Systems Innovation Network. There are city-related hubs. In Mumbai, in India, there are two of them. One is in Mumbai, one is the Bangalore Hub. And these are the members of the Bangalore Hub. To know more about Systems Innovation Network and in particular about the Bangalore Hub, there's a session happening today at 6 p.m. In this summit where you can get to learn a lot more about how you can continue to learn and how you can collaborate with us. So this is the small team who's working behind bringing it in the Indian space. Because I'm presenting here, I'm not really able to see what's going on in the chat. I will keep peeping in once in a while, but I guess we are good to take it forward. So this is how today's session is more or less looking like. We go through some basics of what systems thinking means. I'm sure this entire day at the Rice World Summit is about systems thinking. So you must have done a few more sessions earlier as well, which gave you a brief idea. But this particular workshop today arose from a study. So that's what we are trying to present here today about how systems thinking can, aid us understand problems and in the space of decision making far better. So one of the models we will be looking at today is the Iceberg Model and its importance in the problem-solving approaches and decision-making, and that's what we will be doing at the end of it. I'm hoping to conclude what I have got to show in about 40 minutes, and then we can use the rest of the time in sharing some views and making sense of what it all means. So hope this works for you all. And so let me before I get into this presentation, a little brief about myself is what I would like to give. I'm sure you read in the speaker space what is this workshop about and where I'm coming from, where I'm bringing this whole thing from. So this was part of my master's thesis. Which talked about how systems thinking can help educators with problem-solving approaches, the kind they need it in their classrooms, and even for administrators in the education space. So how does having the knowledge of systems thinking help with shifting some of those ideas, and how does it improve their decision making skills? So the study was basically to check for the impact, and the study was conducted in a teachers training institute in Bangalore, and the results have been amazing. Maybe I'll share as we continue to go through this workshop of what the results showed us. But before that, so yes, you might find a little bit more of examples coming from the education space, but maybe you should also look at it from the fact that any educational institution is also an organization in its own right, and what we see in, say, a private organization or a public organization, many of those elements are also existing in educational institutions as well. So it would be well worth to look at it from that perspective. So going into a little bit more into like what is this workshop about? What is this masterclass? I like to call it a masterclass. So what is this about? So there's none of us who haven't faced problems in the places we are at, and we have to. So the moment there is a problem, there is a process of decision making which is happening in that space, and then we try to get to the solution. So this masterclass is a way to approach, understand, and address problems from a systemic lens, instead of what we normally do is that the moment we think problems, we look at solutions as an immediate next step, and that is what we are trying to avoid. If you look at the graphic over here, it says. The way we do education currently is like into dividing into subjects, and probably to an extent also say primary schooling and secondary schooling, and some sort of siloed way of thinking. Applying the same to organization spaces also, if you see like any organization is looked from the perspective of, okay, this is HR, this is the HR way of doing it, the marketing needs this, the sales needs that, and everybody is like looking at it from their own perspective. But organizational problem solving just somehow it's pretty siloed, and what we need to do is that, like the graphic is pointing out to it, that how everything is interconnected, and we need to start seeing how one thing impacts the other, and so look at it not from the very division of labor kind of a perspective, to move towards a more holistic, more systemic approach, and that's what we'll try to hopefully enlighten at the end of this. And but then we may think like, is systems thinking the only way? Why do we need systems thinking to solve our problems? Weren't those earlier methods of, say, brainstorming or any other existing way wouldn't have worked? I'd like to give a small rationale around here about why systems thinking. This is one, that every single thing we think we are solving a problem for, it's a decision making fork. It's a yes or a no, and so that is one reason why problem solving requires systems thinking. The second thing is, like I was saying earlier, we jump straight from when we think problems, we immediately think solutions. So, but we never really there's a particular need to appreciate the problem as itself. What does it really mean? What does that problem when you look at a problem term, we need to first delve deeper into the term itself, like why it is being defined like this. So to appreciate what a problem really means, and then trying to like reframe it from the different spaces it's coming from, like time and space. Problem just doesn't spring up like a mushroom. It has been there for some time. So the aspects of time and space needs to be, and the context from where it's coming from needs to be understood. And systems thinking, encourages learning. We question everything which comes our way, and it's collaborative, and hence, like, it's a two heads are better than one kind of an thought. And so yes, it's collaborative, and it definitely helps us, like, get to solutions in a better manner, I would say. It's also that systems thinking tells us that there are no perfect solutions. And we better recognize this, that that just finding a solution for the problem is not going to be the end of it. So if you give a solution, it may just have an impact on something else. And it allows us to, having a knowledge of it allows us to make some informed choices, knowing very well that, okay, the solution might give rise to some of the problems, but let's be cognizant of it. And let's then try to go on a process of iteration, and get to a more convenient solution for everyone. So that is why it's my personal belief that systems thinking is a great way to work for problem solving and decision making. So let's get to now the how part of it. Yes, we've defined, like, why do we need systems thinking, and what are we here for, but so we are going to try and use this iceberg model to see that, okay, what we see from outside, whether vis-a-vis what's going on underneath. So we're going to try and use this mapping model to probably figure out a more a better way of getting to solutions. So let's go through an overview of the systems thinking now, and I'd probably stop my screen share here and ask my help to play the video, and ask, can you please help me with that?
Systems thinking is what we call a paradigm. A dictionary definition of a paradigm would read something like this: a worldview underlying the theories and methodology of a particular scientific subject. Thus, we can understand a paradigm to be the foundation that shapes our way of seeing the world. It is the assumptions and methods out of which we build our theories. Now, there are two fundamentally different paradigms within science. One is called analysis, and the other, synthesis. Analysis is the traditional method of reasoning taken within modern science, whereby we try to gain an understanding of a system by breaking it down into its constituent elements. On the other hand, synthesis, which is the foundation to systems thinking, works in the reverse direction, trying to gain an understanding of an entity through the context of its relations within a whole that it is part of. But let's start by talking a bit about analysis. Analysis is based upon the premise that our basic unit of interest should be the individual parts of a system. From this follows a process of reasoning called reductionism. Reductionism is the process of breaking down or reducing systems to their constituent parts, and then describing the whole system primarily as simply the sum of these constituent elements. Reductionism is often described in terms of a three-step process that we use for analyzing things. Firstly, we take something and we break it down into its constituent elements. This is deeply intuitive to us when we wish to understand how a car, bird, or business works. The first thing we do is isolate it by taking it into a garage or lab and decompose it into its constituent parts. Secondly, once we have broken down the system into its most elementary components, we analyze these individual components in isolation in order to describe their properties and their functioning in isolation. Lastly, we recombine these components into the original system that can now be described in terms of the properties of its individual elements. The reductionist approach is the fundamental method behind modern science, and by extension, our modern understanding of the world, and it has proven highly successful in many ways, from understanding atoms and nations. But as successful as it has been, it also has inherent limitations to it. Because we understand systems by breaking the parts down and isolating them, the reductionist paradigm systematically and inherently depromotes the relationships between these components. Thus, within this paradigm of reductionism, the whole system is implicitly thought to be nothing more than the sum of its parts. Thus, analysis works well when there is a low level of interconnectivity and interdependencies within the system we are modeling. Although this may be true for some systems, it is certainly not always the case. Many of the systems we are interested in describing have a high level of interconnectivity and interdependency, examples being ecosystems, computer networks, and many types of social systems. The relations within the system, and not the static properties of their elements. We can and often do continue to use analysis to try to describe them, but the reductionist approach is not designed for this, and thus we need to change our basic paradigm to one that is more focused upon these relations as opposed to the components, and this is where synthesis and systems thinking comes in. Synthesis means the combination of components or elements to form a connected whole. It is a process of reasoning that describes an entity through the context of its relations and functioning within the whole system that it is a part of. Systems thinking is the process of reasoning called synthesis, and it is also referred to as being what is called holistic, meaning that it is characterized by the belief that the parts of something are intimately interconnected and explicable only by reference to the whole. Thus, synthesis focuses on the relations between the elements, that is to say, the way those elements are put together or arranged into a functioning entirety. And like with analysis, we can also identify a few key stages in this process of reasoning. The first step in the process is to identify the system that our object of interest is a part of. Examples of this might be a bird being part of a broader ecosystem or a person being part of a greater culture. Next, we try to gain a broad outline of how this whole system functions. So, for example, a hard drive is part of a computer, and to properly understand it, we need to have some understanding of the whole computer. Lastly, we try to understand how the parts are interconnected and arranged to function as an entirety. By completing this process, we can identify the relations within which our entity is embedded, its place and function within the whole, and within systems thinking, this context is considered the primary frame of reference for describing something.
Yeah, thank you, Naz. I think we finally gotten through the presentation to the video. I hope this was, clear and made a lot of sense to you. Um, uh, I want to introduce a concept at this point in time, which is called a learning organization. And why do we want to do that at this stage? Is just imagine a place. So systems thinking doesn't it doesn't work in isolation with in the institutions where it is embedded in. So if you want to talk about organizations and institutions, that's where we all interact with each other, including societies. A society is kind of a very broad organizational space. So where if you think of this place where we interact as a place where people keep thinking, they expand their capacity, and to create the results they truly desire, where new patterns of thinking gets developed, where all this new thinking becomes a collective aspiration, and then everybody is learning to see these interrelationships and see the whole together. So if you look at any space apart from yourself, even a small team of people, or your own housing society, or a school, or the entire organization, so everything comes under kind of a community which means if you look at the term on the screen, which is learning organization, it can be thought of, something like as a building a community which is committed towards learning continuously and expanding its own thinking. So this is the building blocks of creating such a community are these five of them. That these five things make how organization develops as a thinking, learning organization. And that's where, because we are talking about problem solving and decision making, it comes from all these spaces, not just from at a personal level, but which includes the whole of the organization. So if you look on the left, so it says like the ways of articulating individual and collective aspirations. So we have our own aspirations, then we make it collective. So the two elements of having a personal mastery, which is our own, deepening our own vision, creating a mastery of that, but then extending it to the team and making it collective and making it as a collective aspiration. This pertains to any kind of problem we are trying to solve collectively. Then it moves on to the next stages of when as together we start to reflect on these problems and then try to create and have conversations, collaborate, and then try to build a shared vision and improve our own mental models of how we would think in a reductionist way and how you would think in a systemic way, and developing some of those as a collective unit. And then to top it all, which ties all these other things together, is to recognize and manage this whole complex, the complexity. That is looking at all of these things as a whole, which is systems thinking. So it's a slight departure from what we were talking about until now, but it's important to recognize and to be able to identify these kind of communities wherever we are, to be able to build a collective culture. I don't want to go too deep into these aspects of what the learning organizations looks like. This is just more to bring to your attention that in a learning organization, if you look at this particular part which says the theory, methods, and tools, and probably that's what our attention is going to be today. So these are two basic big parts of your learning organization, where there is an action structure and there is where the from within some things gets developed. So yes, I'm not going too much into it. This is just more for telling this is how the person interacts with the organization in a sense of that. So I'm not going to go deep, but what we would focus on here is to get into these tools here, which are a part of the organizational architecture. So when we're saying we're building, we are talking architecture, right? We're trying to build something here. So the hard quantitative ideas which we bring to any kind of change is what we talk about as architecture. And what you see on the right upper right box is what is the soft stuff, like what is the essence of the person, something which stays for long and what inherently brings change, the mental model part of things. So that's the thing. But we will be looking at how this particular tool interacts and changes this part, which is more longer lasting. So yeah, that brings us to the systems mapping tool, and there is a video again here.
Touch or decide in this world is connected and interconnected to everything else. If we recognize this, include it in our decision making, we can take actions to support our values and build a more sustainable world. The systems iceberg is a tool that can help us better understand why things happen and discover how we can take action to create powerful change. Think about a real iceberg for a minute. Did you know that typically less than a third of an observe and understand why the things we see on the news, for instance, are happening? We need to surface these deeper levels of understanding. The systems iceberg is broken into 4 levels. At the topmost layer, we have the events, or the things that we can see, the one-off things happening around us on a daily basis. If we want to create change on the events level, we often react to them to try and create immediate change, though it's often not long-term. Below the surface, there are 3 unseen levels. The first of these is the patterns level. If we string events together, we can recognize patterns as we begin to see changes or continuity over time. Once we find those patterns, we can try to create change by anticipating what will happen and making a plan to intervene. Patterns are caused by the systems and structures on the layer below. These are the mechanisms, forces, rules, and physical structures in our society that make it work like it does, like the pieces of a computer or the organs of our body, but for our whole communities and society. We can understand systems and structures, then we're able to redesign them in a way that can create patterns that we like and to change patterns that we don't like. Systems and structures often occur because of our mental models, the bottommost layer of the systems iceberg. These mental models are our beliefs, our thoughts, and our values that hold everything else up and shape our worldview. If we can change people's worldviews, we can transform a system to create very powerful change. Let's review this model using our litter in the park example. So one day you see a piece of litter in the park. This is an example of an event, something that you see once. You don't like this litter in the park, so to create change, you react and pick it up. You might even fill a whole trash bag or 2 with trash that day. You go back to the park often and notice that the amount of litter in the park is increasing over time. This is one example of a pattern that you see. You also notice that it tends to increase more on weekends or after a holiday. Now that you've recognized this pattern of litter increasing over time, you can create change by trying to anticipate this pattern. And you work with friends to volunteer for a weekly cleanup in the park, where you come and collect all of this litter and dispose of it. Even though a weekly cleanup is very helpful at preventing litter from accumulating in the park, it doesn't prevent litter in the first place. When you stop to think about this, you realize that there are systems and structures that impact litter in the park. One of these is that there are no trash or recycle bins around the park. So to create change, you work with your friends to write a letter to your local government, maybe your town council, and you lobby them to install recycle and trash bins in the park so people will have somewhere to get rid of their waste. Maybe it's difficult to convince your town council to spend money on bins, or maybe people still litter even when there are trash cans around. You later realize that you could think even more deeply about the litter and consider the mental models that lead to litter. Someone else's job or that their actions as one person don't make that big of a difference. So, to create change, you decide to create some lesson plans on the importance of local nature and avoiding litter that you can share with younger students in your community. You might even work with teachers at your school to go into younger classrooms at your own school. You want to share your passion and your knowledge in hopes of convincing younger students to adopt different beliefs that discourage them from littering and create new systems and patterns and behaviors. This is just one of many ways that your thinking might look if you try to explore what's happening in this litter scenario using the iceberg model. When you do this with the iceberg model, it's often helpful to actually write it all out. You can draw your own iceberg or find a template like this, and you can brainstorm what's happening for each of these layers. After you brainstorm what's happening, you can try to identify what your opportunities are to create change by going through and reflecting on your brainstorm. Now, you might be thinking mental models level change is the best change because it causes transformational change and has the deepest impact. From one perspective, this is true. The deeper you can target change in the system's iceberg, the more potential you have to create powerful change. On the other hand, the deeper down you go on the iceberg, the bigger the challenge in front of you. It becomes harder and harder to take action. It is much harder to change another person's worldview and deep-held beliefs about their responsibility to pick up trash than it is to organize a weekly cleanup. The iceberg model isn't meant to say that some changes are better than others, but it is a way to help you reflect on how your actions might make a difference. And when you consider your own unique context, your time, your resources, and your energy, how you should focus your efforts to create the most change possible in your scenario. Whether you want to address litter in your community or another topic completely, the systems iceberg can help you to take a deeper look at why the events in your world are happening around you and your opportunities to make change. How will you use it to deep dive into an issue that you care about?
Okay, so I hope that video made some sense and gave you a scenario to think about how one can utilize the iceberg to. Yeah, so I'd like to show a few more things before we get on to discussion, and let's see this. And this is something which was there in the video. You must have seen that, but let's spend some time looking at this particular Iceberg model. It talked about react, anticipate, design, and transform. So, but what we need to do is ask these questions which are being mentioned in this place. That when we look at events, we ask like what happened, and instead of just looking at event by event, then when we go down one level down, we start figuring out trends. What has been happening over a period of time, and then trying to figure out what influenced these patterns, what are the relationship between them, and where do we what are the biases sitting, what are the beliefs, what are the assumptions, some of that which needs to be transformed to make a change. So very quickly I'll go on to this. Another example which might make you understand this a little better is I'll keep sharing more examples as well. So if you put it very simply, these are the steps in the iceberg, and we're looking at, say, disruptive behavior of students in the classroom, and we start, the direction of looking at this chart is we start from this place, which is the event which has happened. Right now, please don't look at the shift side. We're looking at the observations first. So what we observe first is a disruptive behavior. But then we see this pattern repeating at these places every time. What are the structures which might be causing it? Are these? And then we look at it from the mental model space. But then if you want to really change and cause a shift, where do you cause the shift? This requires a lot of effort this is very hard even for a teacher to understand we can say it very easily and put it out here saying it's just understand the psychology of the child, but each child comes from a very different background, and it might not be as easy to figure this part out on an immediate basis. And by the time a teacher realizes, the child has been promoted and moved on to the other class. So maybe having a general improved empathy might help with every cycle for the teacher. Similarly, in an organizational space, I would say, by the time you get to understand a person, they are either moved out of the team or of the organization by itself, and then it might not. But in any case, being empathetic towards a difficult behavior might always help. Parents have only one set of children to understand, and probably might be a little easier, but the willingness and the understanding. There are lots of things at play here, like we talked about earlier. We need to look at the constraints of time and space and context and a lot of things, whether this is immediately possible or not. Some of it is, I guess, really possible, right? Some of these changes which you can visually see are definitely more possible to bring in, and with a little resistance, it will be there. But then, if it's not forced and if it is more coming from the stakeholder themselves, say the teacher or a parent, it might be happening much better. Similarly, I'll bring back another organizational level example over here to make it more widely understood. But this is how it looks for a classroom. Similarly, if you are looking at the organizational space, when we look at organizational spaces, say there is a very good employee who produces brilliant results, but at the same time not giving some difficult behavior to see in terms of attitude or in terms of behaviors. If we go by the systemic approach, it can feel like there has to be some underlying cause to this. There could be probably a sense of insecurity from the mental model space, or is there some institutional triggers which is causing such a behavior of an employee. Or so it's then becomes important for us to identify some of those barriers for performance, and when are these patterns of behavior being seen and how we can address them. So again, like the empathy thing comes into play over here as well, and how we not get critical, or there could be tasks which challenge those attitudes by itself. Getting the employee out of the comfort zone could probably subdue those behaviors and let us know what is causing them. So yes, the iceberg becomes a very interesting place to solve problems, especially collective way. If teams are seeing repeated behaviors happening, it becomes a very useful space to sit and use this model to look at these 4 layers and sit and brainstorm and write some of these things down to saying what could be causing it and how they can address it collectively. And then there could be probably a more permanent change towards a shift towards the better decision making in this space than what it could be with a very linear thinking model. And this is where I come to the end of this presentation. If at this stage there's any questions or anything else which would like to be brought up, it would be a good time to discuss some of those. And any particular do you think this is something which could be more easily used to introduce a systemic way of thinking into teams, into organization spaces? The idea is that some of these tools, and this is the most basic of them, but some of these simple models could be useful in making what seems like a very complex topic, which is systems thinking, more accessible to everyone. And yeah, that's what I've got to say here. I'm going to stop my sharing and open it up for any Q&A at this point in time. Can you please put it on chat where I can seat. I hope the session was useful to you. I'll maybe wait for 5 minutes to see if there's anything coming up, and otherwise we'll close the session. Thank you very much for being here, whoever you were, and yeah, thank you.